This is the second part of a two-part clip, so you might want to watch episode 6, which was all about the implantation, before you continue with this clip. Otherwise, carry on. I'll see you in a minute. Shortly after learning about cochlear implants, I was placed on a waiting list for 2 years. That's how long a waiting list was, 20 years ago. But those 2 years gave me time to do the research, time to connect with others, and I even found my own email mentor. But before I leave this, what I like to call the hearing aid era of my life, I want to share an anecdote with you. I had committed to raising money for a disabled children's charity, and I went to an expedition in Borneo. I was 21 years old, and this was my first proper trip outside Europe. And I remember the humidity. I've never experienced humidity like this before. One day, as a group, as part of the expedition group, we went to visit an orangutan sanctuary. Now, these apes live in the trees. So while you're there, you're constantly looking up. I compare it to when you go to New York and you're looking up at all those skyscrapers. Now, I spotted a group of these orangutans, but I was starting to feel really, really warm. So I took my hearing aids off and I put them in my bag. Okay. And the bag was on the floor. So while I was taking photos, I felt the bag move from between my legs. Another orangutan had come up behind me and taken the bag. They're very deceptive, very playful animals. But it was the next 10 minutes that I felt like my world was falling apart. The orangutan had gone into the trees, taken a seat on a branch, opened the backpack, taken my passport out, tried to eat the passport, didn't like it, so it threw it away. Then it found my malaria tablets and tried to get into the package, threw those away. But then it found my hearing aids and it proceeded to eat both of my hearing aids. I don't know why I'm laughing, because at the time I was devastated. But there I was, suddenly thousands of miles away from home, and now totally without hearing. It turned out that the orangutan's name was Janet, and there are not many people I know that have been mugged by an orangutan. So I wanted to share that story with you. What followed next was I had 3 days before I needed to return to the UK. And I spent those 3 days in total silence. I was flying back via Singapore. I had a weekend planned in Singapore, but I stayed in my hotel room because I actually felt very vulnerable. So days later, back in the UK, and I'm back on the waiting game, on the waiting list. The hospital calls, my mother answers the phone, and she relays the conversation. Am I willing to wait 2 more weeks so that I would get what was called the C2 implant from Advanced Bionics? It promised to be the first implant that was upgradable with new features when and as they were developed. Waiting for those extra 2 weeks probably changed my life, changed my entire hearing experience. I had my first cochlear implant 20 years ago, and then my second implant was 13 years later. Now, there's not enough time today to go through the details of surgery and fine-tuning, but if I had 3 ears, I would do it again. So my implants helped me to do many things, and one of those things is laugh. Some of you in the audience know me quite well. I'm always laughing. I just can't help myself. Even before I got my hearing back, even before I got my first hearing aids, my mum tells me how much I just love to laugh. I love listening to music. I live in London, and every year I go to gigs, just try and keep me away. One thing that I've also found quite liberating is the ability to love, but as an equal. So before, for me, love was based very much on how the other person could take care of me. But now it's based more on how we can take care of each other, because I have the capacity, I have the confidence. I also love learning and collaborating with others, especially now. I mean, now that I can hear, it just makes it so much easier. On 2 occasions, I've saved lives. One incident involved supporting someone who was about to jump off a bridge onto a railway line. For half an hour, I just chatted with him. And when he came down from the bridge, he just cried like a baby. And sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had not passed his way that day. Because if I didn't have my hearing, what kind of conversation could I have had with him? The other time was when somebody's heart stopped in a pub. I called the emergency services, and while I was listening wirelessly, they were teaching me how to do heart compressions. The ambulance arrived and he survived. So these are examples of how my cochlear implants have empowered me to save lives as well. And I think that is just amazing in itself. I also love to travel, although we're very limited at the moment. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted people to come to this meeting today, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel disconnected from the work we now do. We work in such a people-centered business, yet we're being asked to stay away from each other. It just feels really tough at the moment. The cochlear implant is definitely one of mankind's most amazing inventions. I mean, it is almost like magic. It's almost like somebody's got a hat and pulled a wand out of it and waved it around my head, and I've got my hearing back. It's just magic. Now, many of you will be familiar with an audiogram. Many of you might prefer presentations like this. So I decided to include this today. At the bottom are the scores that I had before my implantations. This is where I am now. I basically have normal hearing. And that's just amazing. Just amazing. That's all I can say, really. Now, remember Humpty Dumpty and how all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put him together again? Well, 70 people, 70 hearing care professionals over the last 40 plus years have all been playing their part in putting me back together again. They all succeeded in putting me back together again the way I should have been. Remember, I wasn't born deaf, so I'm not meant to be deaf. So my parents are no longer devastated. They, like thousands of other parents, are amazed by the power of cochlear implants. They are thankful, and I love my parents with all my heart. I mean, but I'm mindful that it took many people for me to get here. My parents were not enough. I needed the help of many. So thank you very much, everyone, for giving me an opportunity to share my story today. So it's only looking back that I can say that it takes courage to decide to want a better life for yourself. But not only that, the journey with the cochlear implant is a journey which does require the support of many. So if you're one of these people that are delaying getting a cochlear implant because you're afraid about the journey or the lack of support, don't. There are so many people out there who have been implanted and, like me, want to share their stories with you. So you're not alone, okay? Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.